All right. Give it one more moment. Wait for more people to come on in. And then I'm going to start talking a little bit about 2025 yearly recap in NFL and NBA. Give it another minute or so. Try to get a few more people in here. Happy Friday night, y'all. Whew, it feels weird. All right, good. All right, gonna give it another minute or so. Get a few more people in here. Then I'm gonna start talking. Gonna recap. Gonna recap 2025, the best of the NBA and NFL, the best highs and lows throughout the two sporting organizations throughout the calendar year. Being that we flipped over, now's the perfect time to do a quick little mini recap. If anyone's just coming in, do me a favor, make sure to drop a like and a comment. It'll be greatly appreciated. All right, give it another minute or so, then we're going to start. But, yeah. I thought this year, give it another minute or so, more people to come on. And I'll say this. I thought this year, the NBA was more exciting this year than the NFL as a whole. Now, for me, though, my big moment as a sports fan came Super Bowl 59, my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, destroying the Kansas City Chiefs en route to the franchise's second Super Bowl in franchise history. No. So that was the high moment right there for 2025 between the two organizations, the NFL and NBA. My team winning Super Bowl 59, obliterating the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously I got to be biased there and give the nods there, as any fan would. Now I'll say outside the Super Bowl, I enjoyed the NBA more as a whole than the NFL, but obviously the best moment as a sports fan for me was my team winning the Super Bowl and absolutely decimating Kansas City. And we can look back in hindsight and say that the Philadelphia Eagles, quite frankly, broke the Kansas City Chiefs. That aura is gone. And we saw throughout the entire regular season of 26 season, Kansas City was not the same team. That aura they had, making it to 4 Super Bowls in 5 years, looking to make history, become the first team to three-peat going into Super Bowl 59 back in February. All that was gone the following season, come September time. It's like they just did not click. Now, granted, they didn't have the same roster they've had. And we can say, well, Patrick Mahomes got injured. Yes, that's true. But Kansas City was already struggling, and they were already on the downtrend before Mahomes' injury. So the cracks were already there as far as them being a contending team again. Obviously, the Super Bowl losers curse finally got to them. And I think, the Philadelphia Eagles, they kind of did break the aura of the Kansas City Chiefs, man. I mean, that whole Super Bowl, that defense destroyed. I repeat, destroyed Patrick Mahomes and that Kansas City offense. And they didn't score until the second half. And even when they scored the 2 touchdowns late to make it, what was it, like 40, whatever, to 20-something, but it didn't feel like it was even close. Put it this way, the touchdowns in garbage time made the game look a lot closer than it really was, because that was truly a Philadelphia Eagles domination on both sides of the ball. The fumbles, interceptions, the Eagles defense got on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, they had a field day with him. Vic Fangio prepared that defense, prepared a phenomenal game plan. That's like they kind of borrowed bits and pieces from what Todd Bowles did as a defensive coordinator for Super Bowl 55 when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Kansas City Chiefs, in part because that defense put relentless pressure on Pat Mahomes. Now, here we're at the end of 2025, we can say the common denominator to beating Kansas City, especially in big games come playoff time, is to put pressure on them. Now, this year, that's going to be a non-factor. We know Kansas City's out of the playoff mix. They're not going anywhere this year come playoff time, but that's how you beat them. That's how you beat them right there. You get pressure on them. You force Patrick Mahomes to make mistakes. And because when you give Mahomes time all day in the pocket, he can obliterate you. Kind of what happened in Super Bowl 57 when my team played him 2 years ago. Now it's going to be 3 seasons ago in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 57, where Kansas City's offense came back in the second half. The defense couldn't hold up. Not this time. Super Bowl 59, the Eagles' defense went all out. Mahomes wasn't able to play as well. And ultimately, the Philadelphia Eagles rooted them to their second Super Bowl championship. And obviously, being an Eagles fan, that was the high of the year. Of course, I remember I was at Hard Rock, the casino, when it happened. I came back and I went on Tone to Shields, Chalk It Up, Super Bowl recap, where it was a, quote, call-in show, where it was a StreamYard, where he put the link to the StreamYard in the chat. He gave some of the fans a few minutes to have a few words. I remember I joined that, had a few words about the Super Bowl. So that was definitely the highlight for me. And Jalen Hurts going out there, taking all of his haters' words and forcing all his haters to choke on their own words by winning Super Bowl MVP in that game. That was just the icing on the cake for a phenomenal 2024-25 season, which crossed over into the beginning of the year. Hey, Agent, what's up? What is up? Happy New Year, Agent. That's my co-host on the Pick'ems every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This upcoming Tuesday, next week, the 6th, will be the final Pick'ems for the season. And speaking of that, could probably think of a show to do, probably same time slot, since we know we're both available as a substitute once the season's over. Probably starting with NFL playoffs, but I could DM you that one. But thanks for stopping by. Hope you're having a great start to 2026. May the year bring plenty of new opportunities for you. So obviously for me, that was the highlight of the year. Oh yeah, and speaking of the playoffs, hell, we could even do more in-depth analysis because, it's only a handful of games. And now that the games are more important once we do get playoff time, that gives us something to talk about. And yes, so definitely, playoff-wise for 2025, obviously as an Eagles fan, Super Bowl 59 was the highlight. The icing on the cake for that season that went back to September 2024, week 1. And the Eagles took care of business there. So, of course, there was that, but I don't want to go on forever. Even though I'm an Eagles fan, I'm ride or die with them, there were plenty of other sports highlights to talk about, too. Now, if we take away Super Bowl 59 for just a minute, most of the highlights for me actually came from the NBA. Like, the NFL, of course, had its moments this season. We saw some interesting storylines play out in the latter portion of 2025 and during the NFL season, such as the Indianapolis Colts Daniel Jones story. We saw how that started and how it finished. It did a 180. We saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers collapse. We saw the Houston Texans midseason turnaround after a 3-5 start. Man, there was a lot of storylines that are interesting. It's crazy. We think about starting with the Colts. I thought about it because it seems like every year we go back and revisit the list of biggest collapses in NFL history, in-season collapses, that is. And usually every year there's always a selectful that always come back to light. The 2003 Minnesota Vikings, Culpepper, Randy Moss, Mike Tice, they started 6-0, finished 9-7, got knocked out by the 3-12 Cardinals in the final week of this regular season back when it was a 17-game season. Of course, we remember infamous collapse the '08 Cowboys, the 44-6 game versus the Eagles. T.O.'s last game as a Cowboy. We remember Brett Favre with the Jets, how they started off looking like contenders, only to finish 9-7 and completely miss. Happy Friday, Daniel Berry, what is up? And it seems like as time goes along, we always add more teams to that list. And this year, well, this NFL season, we can add the 2025 Colts to that list of epic collapses. Going from 7-1 to 8-8. And no matter what happens this week, coming Sunday, they're out of the playoffs no matter what. That's brutal, man. And I think it goes back to shout out to my guys on the Sunday morning football show, which we do on the Hardcore Sports Network with me, Mitch Kofsky, Football Talk with Bo, James from Steel by the Lake podcast. We talked about, I said on that podcast, it had to be more than the Daniel Jones injury. For you to go to 7-1 to completely missing out at 8-8 with no chance, even if you win the final game. Like, there was something else beside Jones' injury. Because remember, they started that skid, that 1-7 skid, before the Jones injury happened. They were already had taken a few losses. I think one factor, it had to be the team let it get to their head. They were like, oh, look, we're 7-1. We're the best team in football. We're better than everyone. They got overconfident about their abilities, and it started to catch up to them on the field. Because that often happens a lot, I feel, with collapsing teams. Sometimes it's injuries. Sometimes it's locker room drama. Sometimes it's just teams let their hot start get to their head, and they get overconfident going into the second half of the season. That's when usually the teams that end up ultimately collapsing do a 180. I think that's part of the reason the Colts collapsed. All of a sudden, I think it has to do with everyone. Shane Steichen, Daniel Jones, Jonathan Taylor, the whole roster. I think roster and coaching staff deserve some of the blame for that. I mean, dude. I mean, we know it's one thing to go from 8-4 to, like, particularly back in the 16 game era, like to go from 8-4 to 9-7 and miss. I mean, that's still kind of embarrassing. Or it's one thing to go from 8-5 to 8-8 and miss, but to go from 7-1 to 8-8, that's truly an embarrassing type of collapse. I mean, it's one thing, like I said, to go from, or even go 5-2 and then finish 8-8. I mean, those are one type of in-season collapse, but this by the Colts was truly goes into the lowlights of 2025. But then goes into the highlight, ironically, their AFC South Division rival, the Houston Texans, who started 3-5, are 11-5, and are currently riding an 8-game win streak behind the backs of a phenomenal defense. Really strong defense led by guys like Willie Anderson Jr. and Derek Stingley, to name a few. And though that Houston Texans defense is legit, and they credit to them, they found ways to win games. I think early on, when their record was 3-5, like that was around the time the defense really kicked it into gear and helped the turnaround. But I think those first couple weeks, we kind of slept on that defense and we're like, yeah, they just got a few good games. Houston's average at best, but now here they are 11-5. Yeah, so much for them being average. Yeah, that team is phenomenal. Now, can they win come playoff time? Well, that remains to be seen. Though their biggest challenges will be teams like the New England Patriots, Denver Broncos, or I could even see a dark horse team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, or maybe the Buffalo Bills, because they have the most experience in playoff games out of the teams in the AFC. So I could see them. I mean, you could say, well, if the Steelers or Ravens, well, don't they technically got experience? Yes, that's true, but I don't really see either of those teams being much of a threat, regardless of who wins the AFC North. Maybe I could see the winner of the Ravens-Steelers game maybe getting one win in the wild card round at home, maybe getting an upset there, but then divisional round, they're ultimately going to fall short. against whomever they may play, whether that be the Steelers or the Ravens who wins that division. I think at best they go to the divisional round, at best. But we still got to actually wait for the games they played, see what the seedings look like come Monday morning. Then we'll know for sure. But I got to say, outside of the Philadelphia Eagles, I found the NBA, between the NFL and NBA respectively, if you disqualify my team's Super Bowl win, the NBA had the more interesting highlights outside of that for me. Especially because the NBA in recent years, man, it's been crazy the amount of parity we've seen in the NBA, because historically we're used to a lot of teams. Like, NBA historically has been like that league where your team will have a window to contend for maybe 5-6 years, say, once they develop a good enough roster. At least 5-6 years of window to contend. Either they take advantage of that opportunity or they repeatedly come up short in the playoffs. Like historically, you could see teams like the Chicago Bulls. They had pretty much an 8-year window, won 6 championships. The Lakers with Magic, Showtime Lakers, Magic Johnson. They took advantage of their window. Celtics, Larry Bird. Or you see the Mavs with Dirk Nowitzki. They had a long window. They won 1, made 2 finals. Or you could see kind of like other teams that had their window, but they couldn't excel. Like the Memphis Grizzlies in the 2010s. That grit and grind era with Marc Gasol leading the way. Throughout pretty much the first half of the 2010s, like 2010 to 2015-ish was their time, but they just couldn't get over the hump in the playoffs. Then they had to go through the rebuilding phase. Now they got Ja Morant, but they're kind of stuck in mediocrity now. So you get that. But the NBA in recent years is kind of becoming more like the NFL. And we saw that trend continue through 2025, where you kind of get away from those examples I listed. Or like the Steve Nash Phoenix Suns, who had 5 to 6 good years in championship contention, but they couldn't get over the hump come playoff time. We're kind of getting away from that now. The window's shorter for some of these teams to contend. Like we saw the Phoenix Suns with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton and them. They only had like a 3-year window, really. That all fell apart. 24-25 season, Suns were a disaster. And what happened on Father's Day, the day of Game 7 of the NBA Finals, KD was traded in the afternoon to the Rockets. And then later that night, OKC Thunder won their first championship since 1979, technically, back when they were still the Seattle Supersonics, when the late Lenny Wilkens, who we lost in 2025, rest in peace, Lenny Wilkens, coached them to the NBA Finals back in 79. This was the Sonics/Thunder's first championship win since then. They had 2 finals appearances since, one in the 90s with Shawn Kemp and Gary Payton against the Jordan-led Bulls, 2012 with KD, Ross Harden, where they fell short to the LeBron and Wade Bosh trio. But 2025 was finally the year they won it all. SGA led the way, had his double MVP year in 2025. First the regular season MVP, then finals MVP, when they took down the Pacers in 7 games. And speaking of the Pacers, man, there was another big highlight right there. The breakout year for Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, because Tyrese Halliburton already was a respected player, but he didn't really, he really broke out. Particularly that run where he led the Pacers to the finals was really his breakout run, where Halliburton took that first step in, I would say, potentially being a superstar. Because to me, I feel like there's 2 caliber players. There's all-stars and there's superstars. Like, superstars are the guys, like, some of the established guys like LeBron and Curry, they're still big draws to some degree, even though they're in their later years. Luka Doncic, especially now in the Lakers, he's more of a superstar. I'd say Giannis and Jokic are more superstars because they're those big draws that people come to see across the league. Like Maxey, as much as I love Maxey on the 76ers, I would say he's more of an all-star than a superstar because he's not like a huge draw, like, say, guard-wise, historically. He's not like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant where he was a huge draw. Maxey's an all-star caliber player, but he's not like this huge draw. So I'd say Tyrese Halliburton had his breakout all-star year with that run to the finals. Maybe if he comes back and can lead another big run, maybe he'll become a bigger draw. He'll sell more jerseys, and then maybe he'll be considered a superstar. But to me, like all-star and superstar, the difference is box office, jersey sales. It's tickets sold to home games. Hell, even sometimes tickets sold to away games just because they get to see you play in person. Like guys in today's NBA that had that factor. Like Wemby has a young guy, Victor Wembanyama. He has that factor to draw people in to see the games. That's the reason they put the San Antonio Spurs on Christmas Day, because they know people want to see Wemby. Like that's where it goes from all-star to superstar. Like, so yeah, Halliburton had his breakout year. Speaking of that, the San Antonio Spurs put all the pieces together in 2025. Unfortunately, the 24-25 season and the first half of the calendar year of the Spurs season kind of slid off, where Wemby had a blood clot. They had to pull him. But it ended up being for the better in the long term, because look at how they finished 2025, the early portion of the current NBA season. They were just absolutely phenomenal. And the De'Aaron Fox trade, which they got from the Sacramento Kings before the trade deadline, proved to be worthy. So there's another big highlight. The De'Aaron Fox trade was really helped the San Antonio Spurs team, which looks on pace to compete with the OKC Thunder, maybe even possibly make a conference finals or finals run, assuming everyone stays healthy. So that was one of the highlights. Speaking of trades, you also had the Jimmy Butler trade to the Warriors, which, I'll put it this way. In terms of helping the Warriors going through March and April, yes, Jimmy Butler was a key to the Warriors. He helped them out. He helped them get through the play-in, helped them get to the playoffs, helped them get an upset over the Houston Rockets in the opening round. Then the second round, the ship fell apart, but hey man, but Jimmy Butler really played a key role in helping that team out. And speaking of that, Anthony Edwards, playoff highlights. You had Anthony Edwards had a phenomenal run leading the Minnesota T-Wolves to the conference finals for the second straight year. They just got to get over that hump come conference finals time. That's their big Achilles heel. And then you had that. Then, of course, with the Rockets, we saw them start to break out on their own. They were the number 2 seed. You saw guys like Amen Thompson come into his own, which was good enough, for the Rockets to make that trade for Kevin Durant. And then, of course, you got in Sengun, too. Sengun's another good piece on that Rockets team so far. So we've seen that KD trade's paying off for them. Now, the Lakers, speaking of the Lakers, that was, without a shadow of a doubt, the most shocking moment of the 2025 calendar year for NBA or NFL was the Luka Doncic trade by a mile. I mean, nobody saw that coming. Nobody did. That literally happened just in the middle of the night. Most people were probably asleep when it happened. They woke up and saw it. Some people might have woke up to it first thing on their phone and thought that they were just seeing stuff, or thought it was a fake story, or thought it was a fake Shams account or something. No, not Shams. Who was it? Woj? Or they thought Woj got hacked? It's like, because it didn't seem like it was real. It made no sense at the time. It was truly the most shocking NFL or NBA related moment through the calendar year 2025 by a mile. The most shocking moment. Easily. I mean, look, I actually was awake when it happened. Literally in the middle of the night. When I saw it reported that the trade happened, at first I'm like, wait, are you sure? I had to double check, and then I'm like, what? I mean, it took me a few minutes to process what was happening and be like, wait a minute. Did they really just do this literally in the middle of the night? And then the next morning on Sunday when I woke up, it hit me that, yeah, it was real. Sure enough, Luka Doncic was a Los Angeles Laker. That trade was real. I don't believe it. I mean, nobody saw that trade coming. That was just the most insane trade you could imagine. I mean, and there was a period of time, remember, Luka was out to start 25 with the Mavericks. And looking back now, it all adds up. They probably was some issues behind the scenes between management and Luka Doncic, which led to Nico Harrison self-sabotaging his career, which I get it. I understand the aspect of if the front office wasn't on the same page, you trade him away, but if you're going to do that, you got to at least get the right package in return. You got to at least get the right pieces in return and get something. And that's where the Dallas Mavericks failed miserably with the Luka Doncic trade. They traded away their young, mid-20s superstar at his playing peak, mind you. I mean, and they get him for what? Washed up Anthony Davis? And what did they could have got a haul of picks in return at least. If you want an example of how to trade away your best player in the middle of the night or trade him right before the trade deadline, see what the Grizzlies did when they traded Pau Gasol to the Lakers. They got a haul of picks in return. And they also got the draft rights to Pau's younger brother, Marc Gasol, and he became, for a period of time, the face of the Grizzlies franchise. So that's an example of how Nico Harrison should have took notes from the Memphis Grizzlies about if you're going to trade a superstar in the middle of the night, you better get a haul of picks and get a package in return. I mean, I still can't. That is easily the most shocking moment. And last year we saw the Lakers moved their way up into the top of the Western Conference. Then they got upset in the opening round by Anthony Edwards' Minnesota Timberwolves as part of that run. There was that moment as well. What else did we get in the NBA? For Sixers fans, we got BJ Edgecombe, who we drafted with a lottery pick in 2025. He's what panned out to be a pretty solid piece for the Sixers so far his rookie season. Looks like we might have something going with Maxey and Edgecombe. I don't know. Let me know what you think. And we saw the Mavericks get the number one pick because, sure, nothing fishy about the Dallas Mavericks receiving the number one pick right after trading their star player. Nothing suspicious about that at all, right? I'm sorry, y'all, but you can't convince me that Cooper Flag to the Mavs wasn't at least somewhat fixed. It wasn't the NBA trying to give the Mavs some compensation for Luka getting traded. You can't convince me otherwise. Because, and that's another thing, 2025, nothing against Cooper Flag personally or the Dallas Mavericks organization necessarily, except Nico Harrison, the moron who traded Luka in the middle of the night with nothing good in return. I mean, look, but that lottery was rigged. I mean, it doesn't always seem like the NBA draft lottery. It always plays out a little too perfectly for the league's pocketbook. I mean, do I need to go through that history? Nah. This is about 2025, so I'll just leave it at that. And we saw, what else did we saw? We had the NFL draft. We had the story Travis Hunter the two-way player from Colorado, goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He started off the season looking like he had some promise, but injuries got to him early, which I'll say this. I think, honestly, Travis Hunter, if he wants to increase his longevity in the NFL or wants to have a better shot of not getting injured, I honestly do think he should switch to one side of the ball, either offense or defense. I mean, if it were me personally, I mean, it's not my decision, obviously. Travis Hunter's a grown man. He's going to make his own decisions. But I think if he does, I think it would be smarter for him to play one side of the ball and particularly go as a wide receiver, because I feel like as a wide receiver, Travis Hunter would have more potential to actually break the game open, because we talked about this on the Sunday morning show too. The difference between an elite receiver and elite defensive back is, with all due respect, elite defensive backs, that's wonderful, but it's harder to break the game open when offenses are planning their game plan around you. Like when you had Richard Sherman during his peak with the Legion of Boom, teams were often planning their strategy around Richard Sherman. The Jets, Darrelle Revis, teams would often plan for Jet games around Darrelle Revis, trying not to throw the ball Revis's way, throw it away from him. So, but if you're an elite wide receiver, you can do more to break the game open because you got the quarterback throwing you the ball, everything's going your way. So, if you're an elite receiver, you have more opportunity to break the game open. So I think Travis Hunter, as a receiver, if he were to switch to one side of the ball, could do more as a receiver because he can actually get more involved in the game. If he gets open, Trevor Lawrence will give him more looks on offense, and he'll be able to do more offensively. Whereas if he ends up being a defensive back and ends up being a good defensive back, the other teams will just be like, don't throw the ball Travis Hunter's way. But we'll have to see whether Travis Hunter decides to stick with both sides as an offensive and defensive player. That part remains to be determined, but we're not going to know till next year, or next season, I should say. We also saw the Shedeur Sanders downfall, which I get a lot of people weren't really high on the guy, but Jesus Christ, y'all. I get a lot of people weren't high on Shedeur Sanders, maybe because they felt like he had too much cockiness because of his daddy. They felt, that his Deion being in the picture might be a distraction. But are you really going to tell me that Shedeur Sanders was a fifth-round talent? Come on. Get real. Look, now, I don't think Shedeur Sanders was... Now, I do think he was kind of overrated to some degree, but it got to the point where Shedeur Sanders was being overhyped by the NFL because of his drawing power, to the point where NFL teams were kind of sleeping on his abilities. And we kind of seen that his rookie season with the Browns. Well, Shedeur hasn't been great. He's had his moments where he flashed his brilliance. We saw the Titans game. Even in defeat, Shedeur Sanders played well offensively enough to make it a competitive game. And we even saw the 49ers game in the first half. Shedeur Sanders gave them the offense a spark. I mean, he wasn't great, but he at least showed some flashes and showed that if he gets time to develop, and if he gets the right coach in his ear, he gets an offensive line and some receivers, Shedeur Sanders could be a solid quarterback. But then, of course, you have... Now, the other stories with Cam Ward, the number one pick, went to the Titans, which, unfortunately, I'll say this. The Tennessee Titans did Cam Ward no favors his rookie season with giving him the crap that they gave him. Because, honestly, they did give him a crap. He has nothing to work with. No offensive line, no real receivers to work with. It's obviously been a rookie struggle, as would be for any quarterback playing with the Titans. I mean, you would have to have Mahomes there for this to even have a chance of working out. Or, I mean, you'd have to go in a time machine and get somebody like, you have to get one of the all-time greats in a time machine in their peak just for this to have a chance of working. So I can't really blame Cam Ward too much for the debacle that was his rookie year at the Tennessee Titans, because he hasn't really been given much to work with. He didn't really have a head coach, but look at last year's 2024 first round pick, Caleb Williams, number 1 pick for the Chicago Bears. He didn't really have much to work with his rookie year. He had Matt Eberflus, but now year 2, he's got Ben Johnson, and all of a sudden, looking like a different team. Caleb looks like an entirely different quarterback now with Ben Johnson as his coach. I think that's another story of 2025 right there. The Chicago Bears with Ben Johnson as their head coach they've really taken off this year. I mean, to go from where they were last year with Matt Eberflus to having concerns about Caleb Williams' future to now, Caleb Williams actually looking more like a number 1 pick, and the Chicago Bears having won the NFC North this year and looking like a threat come playoff time. That goes to show you how valuable Ben Johnson is. Now he's really turned around the culture with the Chicago Bears organization. Plus, look at the Detroit Lions this season. 2025 Detroit Lions. What a huge disappointment. I mean, you could even go back to the playoffs in January 25, where they were the number 1 seed. They got upset by the Washington Commanders at home. We went 1 and done. And then they come back, go 8-8 in the regular season, go into the final week, eliminated from the playoffs no matter what the outcome of their game versus the Bears is. That's a huge problem right there. That's a huge deal for them right there. And you got to wonder now, and I saw a graphic that pointed out something interesting, and that is Dan Campbell's record with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator to his record without him. Those 2 seasons he had Ben Johnson, Detroit Lions were phenomenal. They got to the conference championship game that first year Ben Johnson was there, got the number 1 seed his second year. Regular season-wise, they were phenomenal, but without Ben Johnson, you had that first season where they went 13-1, but I can't fully blame that on them. The 9-8 season, now 8-8. Dan Campbell has a losing record without Ben Johnson, so I'm like, gotta wonder. Well, I'll also give the Detroit Lions next season, too. If the Detroit Lions come back next season, they're just meh, then I might say that, okay, maybe it was more Ben Johnson. But that may well be the case. But some people are going to start forming those narratives now, because the Detroit Lions, for the most part, had a lot of the same pieces this year and only managed to go 8-8 with them. Only 8-8? It's like, I really think they lost. Yeah, I really think losing their coordinators may have really turned the ship around. I mean, and turned them from a contender to just a mediocre team with a bunch of good players. Man, what a shame. But at least for Detroit fans, though, they do have the Detroit Pistons, who made the playoffs in 2025, put up a fight against the Knicks, and now this year, they're phenomenal. Cade Cunningham's having himself a really good year. The Detroit Pistons are looking like a contender in the Eastern Conference, so at least Detroit fans have the Pistons to possibly make up for the Lions' shortcomings. But we'll see how the Pistons do going forward, because that was a nice story. The Cade Cunningham rejuvenation, or not rejuvenation, the Cade Cunningham's breakout year. I mean, Cunningham was already a solid player, but we saw in 2025 Cade go from just a solid, good player to being true all-star caliber, potential superstar caliber player. And now the Detroit Pistons are the class of the Eastern Conference at this moment. And I gotta say, with the NBA, I love the parity across the NBA. We've seen throughout the calendar year 2025, we saw Detroit Pistons make the playoffs. And then, this year, they're the number 1 seed. We saw the Indiana Pacers go on a nice midseason run, make the playoffs. Then, make a run to the finals, take the series to Game 7, and give it their all, even though they fell short to the OKC Thunder. We saw the San Antonio Spurs take that next step and become an elite team in the Western Conference so far this season. I mean, we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of power. We've seen it. We saw, the Oklahoma City Thunder win that first NBA Finals since moving to OKC. First Finals win since the old Sonics days, going back decades ago. We saw that, and out in the East, we saw them, and we saw out. So we got some parity going, and now we see the Spurs as potential contenders. The Rockets maybe could be a team that's potentially in the mix for this year or two. They made the playoffs last year for the first time since post-Harden, and that was a huge step forward for them to make the playoffs first time post-Harden, so that was huge right there for the Rockets. And now we see this year the Clippers, after having a decade of just being a solid regular season team, finally falling apart. And now that opens the door for somebody else to step up. Even the Phoenix Suns have been somewhat of a surprise team behind Devin Booker this year, where they might actually be able to sneak in as the playoffs, maybe win a play-in game and get into the playoffs, but that ultimately is going to just depend on whether or not everyone stays healthy. Depends on if the team makes any moves before the trade deadline, etc. But so far, the Phoenix Suns have been a bit of a surprise. Until then you did have the Atlanta Hawks Atlanta Hawks was interesting. They started off really hot this season. Then all of a sudden they just, I don't know. But yeah, but there's been a lot of parity going on across the NBA, too. So it's definitely, I mean, you see it. And so that's what I love about the NBA. We got a lot of parity going on. You see the Miami Heat. They acquired Norman Powell during the offseason, and now Norman Powell's looking like the Miami Heat look like a solid team over there in Miami. With Adebayo, Powell, Hero. I mean, they're actually doing really... Actually, Miami Heat have done a solid job still staying in the mix in the East. I mean, so I love that that's what I love about the NBA. We have a lot of parity across the league. Now, my team, the Sixers, which I've talked about before, they've been a mixed bag so far this season. We've seen Maxey and Edgecombe have really, they've had a few highlights. We saw they defeated the Knicks at MSG after the NBA Cup on that weekend. We saw, they defeated the Memphis Grizzlies on Tuesday night in a thrilling overtime game where both Tyrese Maxey and John Morant came out to play for their respective squads. So Sixers have been kind of so-so. I know we play the Denver Nuggets at Wells Fargo Monday night at 8 p.m. And guess what? Your boys go into that game. Only downside is we won't see Jokic play because he's going to be out. But hey, we gonna see what the Denver Nuggets look like without Nikola Jokic again in a big game against a respectable team or better in the Sixers. So we'll have to see. Just hopefully we don't get any more injuries before then for both teams, especially for the Sixers' sake. But I'm looking forward to that one right there. But and outside of that, we see Michael Porter Jr. step up a little bit for the Nets. Nets are just kind of in middle of the pack team right now. And now we saw Willie Green, the coach for the Pelicans, got fired after an awful start for the season. The Pelicans, let's face it, they're not going anywhere this year. They're not. And you got to wonder, are they ever going to be able to find a trade for Zion? That's going to be an interesting one right there. But we see, like, some of the point is, some of the main headlines that carried from late 25 into the beginning of 2026. You got Jokic injury, how that's going to affect the Nuggets. You got a lot of injuries across the NBA, too. You got Mr. Mitchell Robinson. You got Domantas Sabonis. He's been out for practically forever. You got what's his name? Tyrese Halliburton come back because the Pacers need him. Pacers have been awful without Halliburton, which makes you wonder: are the Pacers going to try to make a move around the trade deadline, maybe to try to get some help around the Halliburton for next season? Because so far it doesn't look like they're going anywhere this year, but you think the Pacers may try to do a trade, a small trade, maybe trade a few role players, maybe try to get a pick and then one role player in return, like a small mid-level trade or something with the team, just to try to get some help for Halliburton for the future, for when he does come back. And so, I mean, I feel like the biggest headlines from late 25 NBA season headed into 2026, just to sum up real quickly: San Antonio Spurs becoming a contender out west. The Lakers carousel with Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves. The Houston Rockets chase for a title with Kevin Durant. And then in the East, you got the Detroit Pistons. Red hot motor start. You got the New York Knicks. Can they finally get over the hump come playoff time? Wonder how the Miami Heat how this Miami Heat run's gonna turn out. And then, well, those are some of the main headlines to check out for. And also, you got to wonder though, are the Golden State Warriors what are they gonna do come trade deadline? Are they gonna possibly take a risk on another veteran maybe? Are they gonna trade Kuminga and Draymond Green and a few of those pieces, maybe to try to get a veteran in a multi-team trade? I mean, it's possible. I don't know if it's going to happen, but the Warriors might just decide to blow it up and maybe make a trade or two. We'll see. The Clippers, Clippers are officially entered rebuild mode at this point. Let's face it. I know Kawhi's been playing recently. He's been solid when playing, but the Clippers are still dysfunctional as a team, and for the future, they really got nowhere to go but rebuild in their future for the Clippers. So those are some of the main headlines I've noticed for the NBA going into the third day of 2026, which will be tomorrow, Saturday, January 3rd. So there's that right there, and So, I don't really have a lot to say about the NBA. Now, the NFL, recap the main highlights. Philadelphia Eagles winning Super Bowl 59. The Tennessee Titans development of Cam Ward. We'll see how they do in the offseason. Where do the Indianapolis Colts go from here? Tampa Bay Buccaneers, do they just blow it up at the offseason? Move on from Todd Bowles, start fresh? Does either Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh or John Harbaugh, the Baltimore Ravens, finally get the boot, and do the Ravens or Steelers finally move on? Where do the Kansas City Chiefs go from here in their attempt to reboot and build going forward? Where do the Chicago Bears continue this wave of momentum? Those are some of the interesting. And also, what about the Detroit Lions? Where do they go going forward with Dan Campbell? What does his future hold without Ben Johnson? So those are some of the real interesting questions going forward. There's a few more interesting. What about the Raiders? What do they do? Do they just go, screw it, just boot the whole coaching staff and start fresh? Get a new quarterback? And what about the Giants? Where do they go? Because the Giants are going to have a head coach opening. If John Harbaugh in Baltimore, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh ends up getting fired, do the Giants or a team like them, or the Titans who still have a head coach vacancy, possibly go for a John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin? Possibly. Or do one of those teams maybe try to offer Bill Belichick one last huge payday? I mean, I think that's a long shot. I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows? But I'm curious as well where the Giants, Titans, and Raiders go from here in their off seasons for 2026. Particularly the Giants and Titans, who we know for sure need a new coach. They already let their coaches go respectively. Giants, Brian Daboll. Brian Callahan was let go by the Titans as head coach. So we're going to have to see where those teams go from there. So, or what about the Miami Dolphins? They already fired their GM. Do they axe Mike McDaniel on Black Monday and go in a new direction at coach? Or do they finally move on from Tua? Do they trade up in the draft? Do they maybe try to make a trade for... Do they try to send a whole package to the Bengals for a seemingly disgruntled Joe Burrow? Does another team maybe... Does Joe Burrow stay put in Cincinnati? Or does... Or is this... Does he possibly move on the outs? It's going to be a lot of interesting questions, particularly. But the Bengals are another team that's going to be interesting to see what they do from here. Especially with Joe Burrow, because we know he's not happy. Do the Bengals basically try to go back to extra length to try to make Joe Burrow happy? Do they try to bring in a few guys that he wants on the team? Do they try to focus heavily on the offensive line? Or there's maybe certain coaches or front office employees that Burrow doesn't like that they maybe give the boot to try to make Burrow happy? I mean, that's another interesting question. I think most likely the Bengals will be more likely to try to make Burrow happy than to try to trade him. So don't be surprised if the Bengals start booting some people, including head coach Zach Taylor, to try to make Joe Burrow happy. So there is another possible option I could see going into 2026. So I said everything I was going to say for now. So we just going to have to wait and see what's going to happen. We know the Philadelphia Eagles got their season closer against the Washington Commanders. I'm expecting them to play their starters and win, because they're going to want to win and the Bears to lose to try to get the number 2 seed. But we just got to wait and see what happens. So we'll see what happens with football, the NBA. Just wanted to come on here, recap some of the main events from 2025, both in the NFL and NBA world. So although I will say this at the end, quick note, rest in peace, Paul Tagliabue, former NFL commissioner. Rest in peace, former Cincinnati Bengal, Detroit Lion running back Rudy Johnson. Rest in peace, Marshawn Lattimore from the Dallas Cowboys. Rest in peace, Steve Mongo McMichael, the former Chicago Bear from the 1985 Super Bowl team. Who else did we lose? 2025, either NBA or NFL. Oh, rest in peace, former Seattle Supersonics coach Lenny Wilkens. We had a lot of figures but that's just part of life. So to those guys and anyone else I may have forgotten the name, rest in peace to them. May their legacies live on. And I think I've said everything I was going to say for tonight. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you haven't done so, just drop a like real quickly. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, especially in the Northeast. Stay warm because it is freezing outside. So with that being said, have a great night. Your boy Nicky Steve signing off. Catch you